So a couple things. I hope you realize I was disappointed with two things. One, I'm very disappointed to hear he's a Celtics fan. I don't know if you guys know this or not. Any Celtics fans here, by the way? Yes?
Yeah, we got a few.
Any Laker fans? Any Laker fans? I mean, come
evil
on.
empire.
We got LeBron James.
Evil empire.
And you know Kawhi Leonard's not going to the Celtics. I hope he doesn't break your heart thinking he's going to go
No, I know
there
he's
with
not going.
Danny Ainge pulling that off. The second disappointment I had was I was fully ready for like 300 people protesting outside, you know, with Ayn Rand, anti-capitalism. You're in state of California. You know, I'm in Texas today. I was telling him and Anu earlier that I lived in LA for 25 years. And prior to living here, I was born and raised in Iran. So I was born 3 months before the Shah went in exile. Okay, so if you figure October of 1978, if you're born in October, science, you know, research has done the greatest people ever were born in October. I hope everybody knows this, but this is scientific proven. I was born in October 1978. My mother was being taken to the hospital. There was curfew. On the way there, they get stopped. And then they escorted my mom to the hospital, and then I'm born. And then 3 months later, Shah's gone. We lived in Iran for 10 years, in Tehran, Iran. I'll never forget one time in a day, Saddam bombed us 167 times, just to kind of put things in perspective. My mother's side, they were all communists. Their Bible was the Communist Manifesto. Okay, I just want you to know this. And my mother would always say, Patrick, I just want you to know rich people are greedy, baby. Don't ever forget this. Rich people are some terrible people, baby. Don't ever forget this. I said, Mom, you're right, Mom. These rich people are horrible, you know. And then my dad believed in imperialism. If you know the difference, you know, like imperialism and communism, right? You're about to create World War III, which is why they only stayed together for 20 years. And they got a divorce. They got divorced twice, by the way. Once when I wasn't born, and then they got together. They decided to have sex one night. I think it's the only time they had sex, and then I was born. And then they got divorced, you know, 14 years after that, which I'm glad they had that sex that one time, by the way. It's a very monumental moment in my life. Even though I wasn't there at that time. So then in '89, we escape Iran 6 weeks after Khomeini dies. We go to Germany. I lived at a refugee camp in Germany for 2 years. Anybody here from Germany? Yes? No Germans? We got one? Okay, good, good. Then November 28, 1990, came to the States. Glendale, California, went to the Army. High school, I had a 1.8 GPA, just so you kind of know my background. I was doing great stuff in high school. You know, I aced calculus. Everything else I failed. I was a terrible student. And right after high school, I went into the Army. Was in the Army for about 3 years. U.S. Army, 101st Airborne Division. I got out. I went into the financial industry. I wanted to first be the Middle Eastern Arnold Schwarzenegger is what I was going to be. I was going to go be Mr. Olympia. I was going to go into Hollywood. I was going to marry a Kennedy and run for office one day as a governor, okay?
You lucked out.
No, I married a Hudman. I didn't marry Kennedy. She's a Bette David now. And so, complete different route. So, and then afterwards, financial services, started our own insurance company. And it grew from 66 agents in Northridge, California to now 6,900 agents in 49 states. I'm the founder, majority owner. Our investors are De La Hoya, Gabriel Brenner, Adelia Group out of New York with a $5 billion fund. So business-wise, we've done well. And I started a YouTube channel, Valuetainment, on part-time basis. Just having fun with it, and then next thing you know, it's at 750,000 subscribers as of today, 400 million minutes watched. We've had Magic Johnson on the channel, Kevin Hart recently. If you go on YouTube, you type in the word Mafia, I'm the #1 interviewer from Mafia, go figure. I interviewed Michael Francese. If you remember Michael Francese from New York, him and I have one of the biggest interviews that led to a movie and a show that's being taking place right now. Ben Shapiro, which he loves. I'd love to see him and Ben in the same room together. Dennis Prager. Anybody here knows Dennis Prager? You look like some of you may know, may not. Yeah, we'll see. Some clapping, some not.
No booze? Where's the booze?
I like Dennis. By the way, Dennis got hot when we were interviewing Jerry Springer. We had a good conversation about his love for Hillary Clinton and why he was having a painting of Hillary Clinton and Obama, but he was missing all the other presidents on the other side, so we had some fun with that one. Anyways, long story short, that's what I do. I kind of want to give the intro before we get into it. So having said that, I'm going to have the pleasure of asking this man some questions here about Ayn Rand, about his story. I've done some research. We got pages and pages of notes that Mario and I put together. And so with that being said, can we get into it? Is that okay with everybody if we get right into it? All right. So thank you for listening to me.
So one thing before we get started.
Yes.
Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand. But listen, let me say this. Let me say this. I have been corrected millions of times.
That's good.
On many of my words. And if I say Ayn Rand again, you keep correcting me, eventually it'll stay there. Ayn Rand. I'm going to do my best. Ayn
Rhymes
Rand.
with mine.
Ayn Rand.
There
Believe me. Mario prepped me right before the meeting. Mario's like, Pat, Ayn Rand, not Ayn Rand. Get it? Ayn Rand. So it took me a while to get my ABCs. I will eventually figure it out. Just be patient with me. Okay. So having said that, let me ask you a question. What do you today... I know you got the book at 16 years old, and you were inspired when you read the book at 16 years old, and you said, okay, this is an interesting book, you know, cannot believe something like this exists, and then from there, in Israel, you go become a first sergeant in the military there, and I don't know a lot of people know this or not, you did very well in the military, and then you come out, you go to University of Texas, Austin, then you go and teach at Santa Clara for 7 years economics, and you go run a hedge fund. So you've had that transition from a kid who was inspired by a book, you're introduced to her, and then years later, you go teach finance in Santa Clara, San Jose, and then you just start a hedge fund based on the papers you're writing. Now you live in Puerto Rico because you're smart and you pay 4% taxes and all this other stuff with them, right? What part of Ayn Rand's philosophies, you keep correcting me, it's okay. What part of Ayn Rand's philosophy do you disagree with?
In terms of philosophy, none of it.
None of it.
None of it. I mean, nothing's really changed since I was 16, except now I understand it, and then I didn't. So when I look at her philosophical work, first of all, I'm not a philosopher, so a lot of the technical stuff, it makes sense to me.
Right.
But no, there's not a portion of the core philosophy that I would disagree with. It's a whole, it's a system. It's logical. It all makes sense.
Right.
It's all well connected to one another, together, and it fits. It works. 40 years later, and it's 40 years. I read it in '77, so 41 years later. Now I understand it, and I'm still as dedicated to it as I was back then, more so.
So one of the things I like when I talk to a pastor, and I'll say, okay, listen, I mean, I understand you're a believer, I understand you're a pastor, and you believe in the Bible, you believe in the Quran, or you believe in Scientology, you believe in whatever it is that you believe in.
Sure.
Book of Mormon,
Sure.
Moroni, all this other stuff, got
Sure.
it, great. I don't know any philosophy that doesn't have any contradictions. I don't know any religion, and I know, the Ayn Rand community is not a big community on religion. Some are, not all of them are, but you mean to tell me there are no single contradictions in any of Ayn Rand's philosophies that she had?
I'm saying there are no contradictions. I'm also saying there might be something wrong there.
Right.
I haven't found it. I'm not saying that Ayn Rand's philosophy is the truth and will always be known as the truth. I mean, certainly philosophers in the future might discover that this aspect needs improving, or this here, there might be, disagreement about this virtue or that virtue, or this idea in epistemology or that idea in epistemology. But I certainly haven't found any. She was a genius. I'm not. And when I look at her philosophy, it all, right now, based on the knowledge I have today, everything I see there is true. But I don't treat it as a Bible. I don't take it on faith. It's true because what I see in reality, what I test in reality, when I live the philosophy, it works. I haven't found a contradiction, and I've debated many people about various ideas, and they've never poked a hole in the philosophy. It's the same as like me saying, capitalism works. Does it work always? Yes, it works always. There are no exceptions. It just works. And it's true. It's the only social system appropriate for human life. And it's not, we've internalized this idea that there have to be flaws, but no, they don't have to be flaws.
They don't have to be flaws.
No.
So
and there are no contradictions, indeed. The fact is that contradictions, if there is a contradiction,
right.
you have to somebody's right and somebody's
sure.
wrong,
sure.
right? So you have to resolve the contradictions. So the problem is that most of our philosophies, most of our ideas indeed come from religion, and because they're based on faith, there's no even methodology to discover the contradiction other than the whole thing contradicts reality. So we've been trained ourselves, well, yeah, we can't all be Jesus. So, okay, so we're flawed human beings. No, we're not flawed human beings, right? So most of the philosophies that we've accepted are flawed, have contradictions. And I think people generalize from that that's just life. So that's a mistake.
So why don't we just talk about the basic fundamental philosophies that she had when you break down objectivism, right? With reality, you know, all of that. Why don't you go through that a little bit?
Sure. So reality is what it is. It is not what you want it to be. It's not what you invent it to be. Your consciousness doesn't create reality, but neither does some other consciousness create reality.
Okay.
Reality is what it is. You know, A is A in Aristotle's terms. And we have the tool as human beings to know that reality. And that tool is our reasons, our senses, our mind, our ability to integrate the information we get from our senses. So our reasoning capability is the way we know reality, not our emotions. Our emotions are products of past decisions we've made, past values that we might have had. And it's not unknowable, right? It's not, reality is there, we know it, because, and we have the tool to know it. And only individuals can reason. You know, we don't have a collective stomach, and we certainly don't have a collective mind. We don't have a collective consciousness. We don't have a collective reason. So each individual can reason. Each individual, therefore, is responsible for his own mind and responsible for his own life. So in morality, Ayn Rand was an egoist. She believed in rational self-interest, that your moral responsibility was to live your life to the fullest, to flourish as a human being, to survive qua human being, not to live for others, for the sake of others, and not to expect others to live for you, but for you to live for yourself. And then what kind of world do individuals like this, who want to live for themselves, who want to make the most of themselves by using their reason to discover the truth, what kind of world do they want to live in? They want to live in a world free of the one enemy of reason, which is the fist, the gun, force, coercion. So capitalism is a system where coercion is outlawed. And, you know, so she's against socialism, she's against fascism, she's against any kind of statism. She believes in government, but government that only does one thing, and that is protect us from coercion, protect our rights. And our rights are freedoms from coercion, freedoms of action. So we're free to act in pursuit of the rational values necessary for our own life, free of what? Free of force, free of coercion, free of authority. So that's kind of, you know, we can go into the aesthetics, but that's kind of the core, quick, 2-minute, 3-minute version.
So self-interest. So self-interest. Yep. Let's talk about that. So meaning, I do whatever I am interested in, and if it is my interest to want to help somebody else, so be it. That's okay. Yes or no?
Yes, but let's first figure out what self-interest means, because self-interest, a lot of people think what self-interest means is do whatever you feel like doing, whatever comes into your mind, whatever some people in the culture today think, well, I feel guilty that these people are poor, so I'm going to help them, and that will reduce my guilt. So none of that, to Ayn Rand, is self-interest. Self-interest has to be rationally shown to be in your long-term benefit, that will long-term benefit your life, right? So it has to be based on reason. So helping other people can be in your self-interest, can be, but it has to be for the right reason. It can be because you want to reduce the guilt that you haven't earned.
But who cares what the reason is, right? I mean,
well, you do. So I don't care what your reason is, really, right?
For me.
But you should care about your own reason, right?
I got it.
Because if you do something that is ultimately not in your self-interest, then you're working against your life, you're working against self-interest, and you're hurting yourself. So your purpose in life is, and it's interesting that the first question always asked in any interview and in any place out there, you know, when I give a talk, first question is, what about helping others? What about the poor? Why? I mean, my always response to everybody, I want to say, why do you care? I mean, why isn't the first response?
That's not my concern. My concern would be the following. Here's what would be my concern to go to that. Okay. Is Ayn Rand's philosophy sustainable to run a nation?
Yeah, I mean, wow.
You really believe that?
I wish.
So let me ask this.
I wish we had the opportunity to show.
You really believe Ayn Rand's philosophy is sustainable to run a nation? With the government's role only playing cops, you know, military, only doing that?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be advocating for the philosophy otherwise, but absolutely. And again, the purpose of the philosophy is not to run a nation. The purpose of the philosophy is to run your own life. And the focus should always be on my life. the only nation, the only kind of nation
Yes.
appropriate for my life and appropriate for your life, and to maximize your opportunities and my opportunities to make the most of our lives, is a nation that is free of coercion, that leaves us free to pursue our dreams as individuals. So that kind of nation, of course, works because it's a nation where every individual is free to make the most of their lives. And what a beautiful thing that is, right? Because how do we make the most of our lives? We make it by producing, by creating, by building, and by trading with one another.
So then here's a follow-up to that question. Sure. Is the philosophy of Ayn Rand, is the concept of Ayn Rand, is it to attract only the Navy SEALs? Is it to only attract the Navy SEALs and we go live in a small place by ourselves, you know, who is John Galt, you know, find all the John Galts in the world, and we go live together because we have a great understanding of each other and how we're wired? Or is it to help, you know, and I know help is a sensitive word in this community, but is it to help and inspire others who are not non-believers yet to convert and say, this way of thinking works, I will also like to be part of this community? Which is it? Because and by the way, for me, you got to realize where I'm coming from when I ask this question. I'm 100% capitalist. Yeah. Okay, I grew up in an environment where I know what it is, what socialism and what communism does. I know what it is to make people feel guilty, to force, to tax. If you don't, I left the state for a specific reason, 13.3% to force me to pay for it, and you don't want to fix the roads.
You're not
what am I paying
you're
for?
Not a real capitalist.
Yeah, I'm not at 4% yet. Not at 4% yet. But that's the real question. Are you just trying to attract the Navy SEALs of the economy?
I'm trying to attract any individual who takes their life seriously. I'm trying to attract anybody who's open to these ideas. And ultimately, look, I think that even if a majority of people don't accept these ideas, but are introduced to them and their lives is made better because these ideas have political influence and we have a more capitalist environment, or their lives is better because they take the responsibility for their own life more seriously rather than obsessing constantly about what their mother told them to do or how to help other people, but first and foremost focus on themselves, then the lives of everybody all of those people become better, and of course the political life becomes better. So no, the philosophy fits any human being willing to engage in his own reason.
So
this is not some elitist, you know, let's go create a cult.
No, but it sounds like it. And I'll explain to you why I'm asking this question. It sounds like it. So for me, hypothetically, the moment you make $100 million, you start getting invited to weird parties. And you go to these meetings.
I haven't got there yet.
Yeah, and you go to these meetings and I say, do you honestly know who I am? I'm a 1.8 GPA guy. All I did is work my ass off, and I read 1,500 business books, and I got in this situation. Okay, great. I don't think of myself as this, you know, special guy that did this. But sometimes I find guys and gals who came from a family with a lot of money, and they feel they're elite because they were raised in that environment. Make sense? So for me, when I think about this philosophy, I say, is this a philosophy to just attract all those free thinkers to come together and let's create a community together? Or is it really to inspire? Is it sustainable to run a nation based on this philosophy? Because logically, based on reason, which is what the community of Ayn Rand likes, I just don't see a nation sustainable to run it based on this philosophy.
That's because you're pessimistic about human nature, and I'm optimistic.
Absolutely not. No, I'm not.
So I believe every individual is capable of reason. I believe every individual is capable of taking care of themselves. I mean, put aside the less than 1% that for whatever reason were born with some defect and they can't do it. Every individual is capable of taking care of themselves. Every individual is capable of reasoning. Every individual is capable of achieving their potential in life. This philosophy is for those individuals. Since every individual is capable of reason, every individual is capable of getting this philosophy. Will it happen in my lifetime? No, right? And would I prefer in my lifetime, if I could, to live in a community of people who get it and live? Sure, I mean, I'd love that. But you know and I know that nobody's going to leave that community alone. So that community is not going to be able to survive as a standalone entity because the guys who don't want to leave it alone have big guns and big weapons. But my point is that long term, there's absolutely zero reason why this can't be the dominant set of ideas in a culture, the dominant view of the people in the culture. And look, most people are not philosophers. Most people are not intellectuals. But they are influenced by the philosophers and intellectuals. So my view is when we get to the point where a substantial number, maybe a majority, of intellectuals and philosophers and thinkers in the culture are advocates for these ideas, the culture will follow. That is, the rest of the nation, the country, however you want to call it, the community will follow, and you will get a society based on these ideas. There's nothing in the ideas that prevents that. There's nothing hard or impossible or anti-human in the ideas. On the contrary, the ideas are built. To be practical, the ideas are built in a sense, they work because they're derived from reality.
So every time I come to LA, if I go to a place and I see this world peace stuff, right? It's a world peace, world peace, world peace, and I see it everywhere. I'll always go to myself, so tell me how you're going to get world peace. Well, you know, and I'm asking them, so tell me how you're going to get world peace. The way we get world peace is this, and all these rich people, you know, all these this. And if we got rid of religion, and if we got rid of this, and we got rid of this is how we could get world peace. I said, so what you're pretty much telling everybody around the world is, the only way we can get world peace is for you to think like me. Yeah. Okay? That's what they're saying. That's the idea of world peace. Okay.
So how do we get world peace? Well, let me give you an example of world peace. So after Napoleonic Wars in the 19th century until World War I, there was basically, on the big picture, pretty much world peace. Why? Because we had capitalism, or as close to capitalism as we've ever had. Since World War II until today, and certainly since the fall of the Berlin Wall, we haven't had major wars, and today is actually the least violent period in all of human history. We've had fewer wars right now. So we're as close to world peace as we've ever been. Why? Because more and more countries around the world are becoming free. So the idea that everybody has to change their mind to mine in order for us to flourish and succeed is true. But the fact is that
it is true. You're saying
it's absolutely true. But think about it, how it's think about how it's happening even today, right? Think about 40 years ago. If I told you that if China wants to become rich, it has to become capitalist. That is, they have to change the way they're thinking. They have to abandon not only Mao and communism, but to some extent they have to abandon Confucius and all the Eastern mysticism, which they have implicitly in their system in order to adopt capitalism. You'd have said, that's crazy, China will never do that. But the reason they're successful today is their logic. They're not completely, not 100%, it's not perfect yet, there's a long way to go, but they've moved dramatically in that direction. In a sense, China now is more of a land of Enlightenment values in terms of the way people live than is Europe, France, where the Enlightenment came about, right? So if you look at the fundamental values that work for human beings, they are spreading. They can go anywhere in the world. Why is Japan rich? Why is South Korea rich? Because they've adopted a certain set of values. They've adopted reason. They've adopted individualism as the core values that have made it possible for them to become rich. Now, we're still at the beginning of a process. There's still 100, maybe 200 years, maybe 300 years, I don't know. But if you take that projection of people better understanding these fundamental ideas, reality is reality, reason is efficacious, the individual is what counts. If they get those three ideas, wonderful things happen. Africa is starting to turn. And this is going to be an evolution. It's going to take a lot of time. But there's, again, no reason why in 300 years, 400 years, people won't adopt a completely different philosophy than they have today, which I hope is mine, right? Because I think that'll be good for the world. Ideas are what shape history. Ideas are what shape history.
So what do you think about religion, Bob? My question was going to get to a whole different point about what I see with Ayn Rand, but what do you think about religion?
Wow, where do you start with that?
Let me instead of asking a
lot of
question,
negative things.
Let me ask in a different way. Has religion has it done more good for the world or bad for the world?
Well, it depends when, right? So religion thousands of years ago served an important purpose in human life. Human beings need a philosophy. They need guidance. They need some explanation for the world around them. And religion provided that explanation for a long time. Maybe you could argue until the scientific revolution there was some need for some kind of religious explanation. Where there was the Greek gods or where there was the monotheistic religions, human beings needed some guidance.
Okay.
But at some point, and by the way, at the same time as that was happening, for reasons I'll talk about in a minute, they were also slaughtering each other at the same time, right, over this. Starting from the Enlightenment, right, and starting with the scientific revolution, people discovered, wait a minute, we don't have to get guidance from authorities, the Pope, the preacher. We can actually use our mind to discover the truth by ourselves. We can learn about the world without this. And So religion lost its purpose. So there is no purpose to religion today. So when Nietzsche says God is dead, good riddance, and he never existed, of course, but religion lost its meaning with the discovery of the efficacy of reason and the scientific revolution. I mean, overall, religion does a lot of damage because it highlights for the individual the opposite of reason, which is faith. Faith is the opposite of reason.
So you're not a fan of faith?
Obviously not.
Okay,
so I'm a fan of reason.
So let me ask you a question. Let's go on faith. So so you're saying Ayn Rand is not a person that's driven by faith?
No.
What brought her to U.S.? Why did she come to U.S.?
Knowledge.
Why did she?
Knowledge.
Knowledge of what?
Knowledge of the freedom that existed in the
How
United
does
States.
she know that?
She saw it in the movies.
But that's not an absolute, though. That's a movie. That could be a propaganda.
Sure, it's not absolute.
But that's a contradiction right there.
No,
of course
it's not a
it
contradiction.
Is. Well, to me,
first of all, faith and probabilities are not the same thing. So she had evidence. Faith is the absence of evidence. Faith is when you have no evidence for something. There is no
There's
evidence.
Plenty of evidence on a lot of different religions if you talk about
no evidence
of course there
for
is.
God.
There's
no,
plenty of them.
There's zero evidence. Zero.
There's plenty of them around you. But
there are plenty of religions around me, and
not
zero
religions.
evidence for their truth.
No, but if you think about it, because this is the contradiction on how I see it. This is the contradiction where I see it. I believe she is a woman of faith. Ayn Rand is a woman of faith. She is living in, and by the way, I'm not talking about God. I'm not talking about God. I'm not talking about the fact that God exists. And look, I'm in the fire. I'm in a complete opposite place right now. You guys are on the same page. I'm trying to challenge you, and you have control over me right now because there's more of you. There's only one of me. But I sit there and I think about it and I say, here's a woman that leaves Russia. I mean, all you've been watching is movies that you have control over. It's a fantasy. I'm going to go to U.S.
How do you fantasy? Know? A culture that produces...
She has no idea, though.
A culture that she has every idea.
How would she have the idea if she's living in...
because when she was a child, they left and they were in Western Europe. So she saw Western European culture versus Russian culture. She saw it with her eyes. Plus, you've got a culture that produces these movies. Not every culture produces these movies. Russia can't produce these movies. Other cultures don't produce this kind of movies. Plus, you've got books and stories. You've got newspaper articles. You've got pictures. Even before the rise of communism, there were newspapers. So I'm not saying she has certainty. She might not have certainty. But she has massive quantities of evidence. But don't equate faith with a probabilistic... I might not know something with certainty. But if I have a lot of evidence, then I know something and I can act based on it. I mean, I'm a finance guy. I don't have any certainty about where the stock is going in the future.
Too, yeah.
But I don't consider that faith. I consider that I have evidence and there's a probability, I put a probability on the ability on where the stock is going to be in a year. But that's not faith.
So
faith would be if I had no evidence and I'd say, Coca-Cola, I just love the name.
Some could argue with that. Some could argue with that to say there's plenty of evidence for faith, but I don't want to go make this a religion thing. I want to keep it specific to economics right now. So going back to the contradiction side. Okay. So she's not a fan of saying that people helped her, right?
That people what?
She's not a fan of saying that people helped her. Like she's been quoted writing about saying, "No one helped me. No one helped me."
That's not true. I'm sure she asked her husband.
You can easily find it where it says, I wasn't helped. No one helped me.
In that sense, she was trying to make a specific point. Absolutely.
About the fact that she never was helped. Okay. But she comes here, and she lives with a family in Chicago. While she's living with the family in Chicago, who owned a movie theater, she went to watch a couple hundred movies, and she was inspired. And she borrowed money from some people and all this other stuff. And so the biggest challenge for me, she's on her second interview with Phil Donahue. Okay. And so she's wearing that baby blue dress. She looks amazing, by the way. She's wearing a baby blue dress. And she's sitting up on stage by herself.
That interview is on YouTube, and everybody can go watch it.
Of course. It's a gem. Absolutely, it's a gem, right? And a lady gets up there, and she says, I used to be a believer. I'm no longer a believer. There are parts of your stuff I agree. And she says, why are you telling me? I don't care. And she says, I'm just sharing it with you. Yeah, but go say to another crowd that also disagrees with me. I don't want to hear it right now. This is my show. I'm here because you have to hear from me. And that level of intolerance to me, if I can't share my opinion around you, then this is what happens. Let me finish this question, and I want to hear you out.
Sure.
This is what happens. It becomes either one of two things. Years ago, the Republican Party kept getting their tail handed to them because they had a campaign called anti-abortion, Democrats, the liberals came out with pro-choice.
Yeah.
And pro-choice all of a sudden went like this,
Yeah.
right? And they were getting killed. So they got together and they said, listen, this anti-abortion campaign doesn't work. We have to change it. And they went from anti-abortion to pro-life. Once they went to pro-life, boom, everybody said, I am pro-life. I am pro-life. These words are better. So do you think a part of the reason why maybe, and by the way, you're selling more books than ever before, 30 million plus copies sold. There are people around the world that are more interested. After 2008, the market meltdown, people have been buying hundreds of thousands of copies, and I'm giving the data out there because it's accurate data.
Yeah.
Library of Congress talking about this being the second most sold book, outside of the Bible. Not
sold,
popular, popularity with readers, with all this. Okay, credit's there. Believe me, I'm a big fan of her content. But do you think there's got to be a little bit of a repackaging of the content being sold to the world to embrace the content? Do you think part of the packaging and the story that's being sold, it's tough for people to embrace when you say virtues of selfishness?
Yeah, it's tough for people to embrace, absolutely. But it's tough for people to embrace. This is not going to be easy. So I don't want to soft pedal this, right? If you're going to take on these ideas incredibly valuable to your life, but it's going to require you to do real work, and it's going to challenge your existing beliefs. Your existing belief set is going to have to be turned upside down. Now, could you do a better marketing campaign? Sure. I mean, we try to do marketing campaigns all the time. But look, when somebody stands up in the audience, like Phil Donahue is standing there, and he's challenging her constantly, and he's basically saying, you're wrong, and I don't agree with anything. And she takes it, and she answers, and it's great. But a woman in the audience stands up and basically insults her by saying, I used to believe in this nonsense, but I don't anymore. Well, what are you telling me that
But she
for?
didn't say it like that.
But that's exactly what she meant, and that's what I meant.
There was another person that insulted. I was like, listen,
but that's an insult to say that to somebody. To stand up and say to somebody, I used to think what you say makes sense. I don't anymore. Then why are you asking me a question? Why are you here to listen? What's the point? So if you listen to Ayn Rand's Q&As, and particularly if you read her letters, we've got a book of all her letters. She would take questions across the board from religious people and leftists and rightists and all kinds, from teenagers and everything, every political view, every philosophical view, and she would patiently write them an answer. And some of those letters are beautiful and some of them are incredibly philosophical. But she was very, very sensitive, and she could hear it. To somebody just
very obvious,
somebody just wanting to insult her, somebody just being being obnoxious, and she dealt with that. Now, would I deal with that question the same way? Would I deal with this question the same way? Probably not. I'm not sure which one of us is right. But that's not the point. The point is for the viewers, right? Is engage with her philosophy, engage with her ideas. Put aside whether you think she was a little gruff or she was a little rude or whatever. That's not the point. Are her ideas true? Are her ideas, beneficial to human life? Are her ideas?
Some of them are unbelievable.
Well,
some of them have been life-changing to me. I mean, I can't even tell you what it's done to my life.
I know thousands, and there are hundreds of thousands of millions of people who would say that, whether they accept the whole philosophy or not.
Of course. Yeah.
Her ideas have touched millions of people, and sometimes only some of her ideas. Now, I think the entire philosophy is consistent as a system. There are no contradictions, and I've embraced it all. But I completely accept the fact that people take a part of them, and that's better, because to the extent that somebody takes Ayn Rand's ideas seriously, to that extent their life becomes better, to that extent they're better human beings, and my world is a better world as a consequence. It's in my selfish interest that people take her ideas even a little bit seriously. So go read her books, go engage in ideas, nonfiction, fiction, watch her videos online. But let's get away from Ayn Rand, in a sense, and talk about the ideas. That's what's important, right? And that's what's going to change the world in the future.
The reason why I came over here was the following reason. Yeah. So I went from, do you believe this is sustainable to run a nation? Do you believe this can go out there and get to the masses? Is the goal for you to be in a small community of John Galt type of a thing? Hey, we have our society, it's just going to be us. Hey, why don't all of us go put our money together and go buy Belize, and we run the nation and we build that? Honestly, we can go do this for Belize. That's an idea. If you think about it, Belize could be a place we can do this at. You can't do that a lot of other places outside of Belize. Okay, let's go do that part. That'd be kind of great, and it's all entrepreneurs, free thinkers, creative thinkers, and Peter Thiel wants to create an island and all the people get together. I understand that concept, if that's the goal. if the goal is for us to create a community and go out there and think about it this way, where it's
So let me ask you, because libertarians bring this up all the time, so we might as well put it on. So let's say you do that, and let's say you have real freedom. And in my world, real freedom means private banking. It means none of all these rules around banks. And if you want to, if you want to have withdraw more than $10,000 in cash, nobody should have to fill out a form. Unless you have all of that real there. And you're building a wonderful capitalist community. How long do you think before the Marines show up? And in the name of money laundering, drug smuggling.
Why isn't anybody bothering Dubai?
Oh, because Dubai plays by the game. Dubai plays the game. Dubai banks are registered at the Federal Reserve. Dubai banks play by the Federal Reserve's game. Dubai is not a free market. It's not capitalism. It's part of the system that exists out there in the world. It is not true capitalism. It's not. Certainly not the kind of society I would want to live in.
You look at Panama. Panama's got a 2% unemployment rate.
Panama's the same thing. And if you look, and it's great that Panama has a 2% unemployment rate, but it's not a real capitalist society.
So, but you believe 100% of this philosophy is capable of a nation being ran based on 100% of this philosophy?
Absolutely.
How big? How sustainable is it on how big it gets?
The globe. I don't believe in one government for the whole globe, but I believe that every government in the world could have this philosophy.
How do you feel about the way the U.S. government is set up?
I think originally the way it was set up is pretty good. I like it.
Which part of it? Which part do you like?
I like the fact that no one branch of the government has very much power. I like the fact that they're all a little impotent. I wish they were a little bit more impotent. So I like you have two houses. I like you have a president that's separate, an executive branch that's separate. I like the fact that you have a Supreme Court. I would like to have a stronger constitution that was clearer and more articulate and stronger and was much clearer on what individual rights mean, what the purpose of government is, and how do you actually enforce the role of government, which is the protection of individual rights. So I would rewrite the Constitution.
Can it be clearer than what it is today?
Yes,
I mean, the way it was written, it is.
Unfortunately, it could be much clearer. Partially because, remember, they wrote this in a long time ago, before capitalism really took off, before you had the institutions of capitalism, before you had the institutions, you could write it a lot clearer. For example, I'll give you an example. I believe there should be a complete separation of economics from politics. Politicians should have no power over the economy.
Limited government, not even a limited government.
But let's just take in one realm, in the realm of economics. I believe that you should have a Treasury Secretary, other than, distribute to the different departments or whatever. So it's an accountant. You don't need a. But basically, the government has no regulatory role in the economy. It just doesn't intervene in the economy. It would be nice if, in addition to the separation of church and state that exists in the economy, in the Constitution, which is great, there was a separation of economy from state, right? And there was a separation of science from state. And there was a separation of economics from state. So I would have 4 separations in the Constitution instead of just 1. And that would be clearer, and it would keep government in its place. Get out of the minds of my kids. Get out of trying to run doctrinaire schools.
So you're for
homeschooling? No, I'm for private schooling. I'm for private schools.
Okay.
Homeschooling is fine as an option, but I'm for private schools. Privatize the entire system. Why do we have private insurance companies? Although you're heavily regulated. Why do we have private insurance, but not private schools? Private schools are much more important, right? I want competition. I want innovation. I want choice. I want people to care about the education their kids get. I want to have innovation.
So in your world, there would be 100% deregulation.
Yeah.
100% deregulation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying there wouldn't be laws, because in the world we live in today, there's confusion between regulations and law. Regulations are there to try to dictate to a business how to run its business. Often it's preventive law. It says in advance, this might be a problem, so don't do it, right? No, I want laws to exist on the books that
Who enforces it?
A police and a judicial system. So I'm not an anarchist, right? So I want laws on the books that protect property rights, that protect individual rights. So if I'm doing something that clearly harms you, whether it's poisoning you with dirty water or dirty air or something, then yeah, you have recourse against me, and the government has recourse against me. But the government just can't out of nowhere say this is okay and that's banned and this is banned. No, there has to be proof. There has to be a system. There has to be a methodology to determine when something is banned. It has to be proven that it hurts somebody. that it's actually damaging to human life. Rights are being violated. So their job is to protect property rights, which is hard. It's not easy. So you need a government, you need a court system, you need a legislative branch, to figure out, for example, with the internet, what is property? How do you apply property to intellectual stuff? How do you apply property to the internet?
You're simplifying it more than it may be easy to do that with 50,000 people in a country, but 330 million?
It's the other way around. The more complex the system is, the more important it is that you have freedom.
Yeah.
The more complexity you have, the more capitalism is important. I can centrally plan, probably, don't hold me to this. I don't think it's right, I don't think it's moral, but I could centrally plan a 50,000 person community and do okay. Could I centrally plan a 300 million people? No way. So even from the perspective...
That's my point.
Yeah, so the more complex, the less economic justification there is for any kind of planning, the more you want freedom, the more you want capitalism.
Right.
The bigger it is, the more this philosophy, in a sense, qua economics, works. So you could have a kibbutz, right? An Israeli kibbutz where you have socialism on a small scale, and it can survive for a little bit. Even that dies because without subsidies from the outside. But you can't do that on a big scale. We saw what happened.
So who helps who, though? Who helps who?
What's that?
So who helps who? Who helps who? If everything is privatized...
Who needs help?
You're assuming...
So
do you follow the Pareto theory? Do you follow the Pareto theory?
No, because the Pareto theory is a theory of static equilibrium. And I don't believe there is such a thing as static equilibrium.
You believe 100% of people are going to be effective 100% of the time?
No. No.
So who helps?
So let's say your house burns down and you didn't buy insurance for whatever reason.
Okay.
And you're a nice guy and you've got neighbors. What happened in America before the government stepped in and provided you with welfare and everything else? Your neighbors got together and they said, he's a good guy, we like him, no fault of his own, he should have bought insurance, but okay. And we're gonna come together and we're gonna help him build a new house. So, but you shouldn't expect some guy, you live in Dallas, you shouldn't expect somebody in California to pay for your new house. If your neighbors want to help you, great. But what if you're a jerk? What if you're a jerk and your house burns down and your neighbors actually hate you and you're not worthy of their help? Then you're not going to get the help. So first of all, virtue is rewarded under capitalism. If you're a good person, if you're a nice person, then people will help you when you need that help. But it's not automatic. Your suffering does not place a moral claim on other people.
That's what happens, though. Unfortunately, that's what happens. You're going to have, but
but
that's always happened. That's not just today. It's always. You're telling me there's never been people that have exploited other people?
No, I'm saying always there've been people that have exploited other people.
Okay, so let me ask you this.
But when we're free, there's less exploitation because when we're free, we get to make decisions for ourselves, and we're much more focused on our own self-interest. But when you have a system where my money is taken from me by the point of a gun, which is what taxes are, money is taken from me, and then some bureaucrat decides who to help and who not to help, then I'm being exploited all the time, every single day. Except in Puerto Rico.
Anybody else lives in Puerto Rico here? I'm just curious to know who else lives in Puerto Rico. No, just yourself?
I'm trying to convince them because maybe that's our beliefs, right? Maybe that's the belief.
Maybe they don't have faith. Maybe it's the faith
not
issue.
An issue
it's just it's a faith issue.
I haven't given them enough
If you had faith, you would have gone to Puerto Rico, right? You would have moved out there already.
Please don't do it on faith.
So if 7 billion plus people today all believed in the philosophy of objectivism, what would the world look like?
Oh my God! I mean,
I'm really curious.
No. I
7 billion people today say, "Listen, I buy in. This is insane. I'm all in." What's it looking like?
You wanted world peace. You got world peace.
It's the most boring world ever.
No.
I mean, are you kidding me?
It's the most exciting world ever.
It's the most boring world ever.
Think about the innovation.
Are you kidding me?
Think about freeing up billions of people, freeing up to think and to be entrepreneurs, to create, to build, to make.
That sounds utopian.
No, it's not utopian.
Of course it's utopian. It's the same thing when liberals say that, we have this utopian. It's the same.
You asked me. I didn't say I expected this to happen tomorrow. But think about what has happened again in countries in the world that have adopted just a little bit of this philosophy. Not the whole thing, just a little bit of it, right? You see beautiful skyscrapers. You see massive innovation. You see production, wealth creation. You see people rising out of poverty. So every place that's adopted just a little bit of this, a little bit of freedom, a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of reason and science and thinking, boom, now extrapolate. What would happen if they did just do a little bit? What happens if China tomorrow, forget my philosophy, what happened if China tomorrow said, you know what, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and Hamilton, they were right. We're going to adopt a constitutional government. We're going to separate state from economics, and we're going to adopt the American constitutional model. China would almost instantaneously become 5 times richer, more innovation, more production, more creation. So why do you say yes on that, right? Now, okay, now take it even one more step further, and wow, what an exciting world. It's so much fun, so much excitement, so much innovation, so much dynamism.
I don't see it.
Yeah,
you know why I don't see it? Here's why I don't see it. Okay, by the way.
But, I mean, the world today is interesting because people are killing each other in Syria and in other places for absolutely no reason because their God doesn't agree with somebody else's God or whatever.
No, that's extremist.
I want all of that.
Their God, it's their extremists. Because we have extremists in capitalism as well. I mean, you know crony capitalism doesn't work like...
Well, crony capitalism doesn't exist. Let me just say, there is no such thing as crony capitalism or conscious capitalism or any capitalism. This is capitalism. Cronyism is a feature of the state. Cronyism is a feature of statism.
That's so extremists of a religion is the same thing.
No. Cronyism is not an extreme of capitalism. Cronyism is a feature of uncapitalism, of the opposite of capitalism. When you take capitalism away, what you get is cronyism. If you have capitalism purely is a separation of state from economics. If government doesn't have control of the economics, how much cronyism would you have?
I am totally with you.
Zero.
I am totally with you on that side.
So you can't, there's no downside.
You made the concept about Syria, and I said that's not a religion, that's the extremist.
Well,
listen, I was an atheist 25 years of my life. Okay, I'm giving a whole different standpoint for me. I'm not going faith here. That's an extremist we're talking about. And unfortunately, sometimes in capitalism, guys come up, they go to politics. Look, I'll give you a perfect story.
Yeah.
I'm in Harvard, okay? Yeah. I'm at their OPM, no, I didn't go to Harvard. I went to an OPM program. It's a 3-week program. I'm not bragging that I went to Harvard. This was entrepreneurs that came together. Yep. It's a $40,000 course. You go for 3 weeks. And it's 65 entrepreneurs from 144 different entrepreneurs from 65 countries.
Yep.
And one of the guys says, you know, instructor, I'm really struggling because I used to have 31% of the marketplace. And this one business came in, and he took 17% because it's 2 different businesses combined at 17%. I only have 13%. Really taking it. What do you think I should do? So the instructor says, well, what do you guys think you should do? You know, this is about, you know, us talking to one another. What do you guys think you should do? This one guy from Brazil says, let me ask you a question. Who's running for office? And by the way, he is not laughing.
Yeah, I know.
So everybody, I'm sitting there saying, let's just see what's going to happen. Who's running for office? And he says, what do you mean? He says, is there anybody that's running for Congress, Senate, governor, office, anybody? He says, yeah, of course, there's a couple guys. He says, listen, very simple. You go tell them right now, $1 million. Okay, what is the dollar amount for you? You give them $500,000 up front, $500,000 upon passing the bill to make the barrier to enter for the other guy. Then he gets the other $500,000 bonus. Those 2 guys will be out of business. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, the way he said it was so nonchalant, like, you know, just go out there and do it. But there's
have you been to Brazil?
I have not, no.
Well, if you go to Brazil and you see the level of poverty and you see the level of lack of production.
I'm not on this page.
No, so my point is, yes, that's how the world works. And it's a disaster to the extent that it works. So we reject that. We want pure capitalism. We want a capitalism where that is impossible. Great. What is the downside of that? There's no downside here. You're looking for downsides, but if I make that impossible by making those senators impotent when it comes to the economy, make them so weak that they can't impact the economy, there's no point in bribing them.
Who's the leader, by the way, in your society? Is it a president, or is it like a chief of a commander, or chief like a military guy, not a president?
No, I think the American system is a good system.
So you like the system here?
I like the American system as it was at the founding. Again, I think it's been perverted and distorted. The executive today has way too much power. All these regulatory agencies are unconstitutional. So I'd like the original system where the president had some power, but it was weak. But look, and you need a military because you need to defend yourself. But the point is that you know, if you recognize that what this guy said about Brazil is leading to poverty in Brazil, then if you take that out, you would lead to more wealth in Brazil. So why can't we have the whole world be capitalist?
I'm 100% there with the world being capitalist. I'm going back to the concept of there being still some contradictions in it, that there's got to be some contradictions in it that's not being addressed. Let me give you another one here, okay? Virtues of Selfishness. Yeah, Virtues of Selfishness.
Virtue of Selfishness.
Virtue of Selfishness,
Yep.
by Ayn Rand, right?
Yeah.
Virtue of Selfishness.
Yeah,
Do the virtues of selfishness work in every aspect of life?
yeah.
Every aspect of life.
Every aspect of life.
In your personal life.
Absolutely.
In the bedroom with your wife.
Absolutely.
So let's go right there.
I love my wife.
Wait a minute. Just visualize where I just went.
Okay.
Okay.
No, I get it.
Hey,
I
babe.
get it. Hey,
Ready? Ready.
I'm happy. I'm happy to go from politics to sex.
I got mine, babe. But babe, I didn't get mine. But babe, we believe in virtues of selfishness.
But wait, what does selfishness mean?
I'm satisfied.
Yeah. So are you satisfied? Are you really satisfied?
It felt amazing, bro. Let me tell you, I am like solid. I'm ready to go to sleep.
So, if your wife,
Yeah.
if you really care about her, right? What does that mean that you love your wife? What does love mean?
It's an action.
No, it's not an action. What does it mean?
You ask me. I'm giving you love to me as an action. It's a verb.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Verb means I have to show my love for her. I don't just say I love you and that's enough. I got to show it.
But it isn't, because it's in a sense an emotion, right? It's something you feel about this other person. What constitutes that? Is she important to you? If you love somebody, are they important to you?
Sure.
Is their happiness important to you?
Of course.
Does their happiness contribute to your happiness?
Sure.
Then making them happy in bed, is that going to make your satisfaction even greater? Of course.
If I'm married, yes. So if I'm single, you're saying forget about it if you're single.
No.
Well, that's what you're saying. So we got it. So if I'm single, all the young fellas,
No.
go get yours and forget about her,
That's
right?
exactly not what I said, right?
Quote it.
So it's not what I said. It depends, right? It depends. Is this a one-night stand? Or is this a woman that you're sleeping with that you expect that you're going to marry, or you expect you're going to have a long-term relationship with? Do you love this other person? My point is this: if you love another person, then their happiness becomes part of your happiness. And it's completely selfish to take care of this other person, to make sure that they're enjoying the sex as much as you're enjoying the sex. Because the fact is, you'll enjoy the sex more if they're enjoying the sex. If they lie there,
I agree.
this, right? If they lie there like a cardboard, and you're having some physical sensation, that is nothing as compared to they're having the time of their life, and because you're going to have the time of your life. So the idea that selfishness means you don't care about other people, that selfishness means that you actually ignore other people, is stupid. It's silly. It's silly.
But this is the point.
But the point
is, it's not packaged right.
No. The point is, let's think about what the word means, and let's think it through. Ayn Rand is challenging us. You can't take morality and put it in one word and hand it to somebody and they're going to get it. Morality takes work. So the word selfishness is a challenge. Well, what do you mean? What is a self? Is a self just the momentary pleasure of an orgasm? Or is the self the entire life, all my values, everything that I encompass, my consciousness, my future, my life? And then what kind of behavior and what kind of values do I need to adopt in order to make my life meaningful and joyous and happy over this period? And do other people have a place in that? Well, of course they do. But they have a place in that because they have a place in my happiness, because it's selfish for me to care about them. So you have to unpackage it, and it takes effort and it takes work. But that's beautiful. It's a challenge. It's not, bam. All right, I get it. Let's go on. And you see, we learn that morality is simple. Just take care of other people and don't be selfish. Don't think of yourself. Just take care of other people. And that sucks. Nobody wants to actually do that. Everybody wants to take care of themselves. Everybody cares about themselves. So we learn from a very young age to be cynical about morality, not to take morality seriously. And we go to church and we do our thing and we pretend and we say, oh, Jesus, right? But nobody wants to be Jesus. Nobody wants to be Mother Teresa. I haven't seen anybody volunteering to become a next Mother Teresa, right? So we live our lives, but then what happens, right? We've got this moral ideal that we've been taught, and we're living this life, and we feel guilty. And that's unearned guilt. Why should you feel guilty? And we can't achieve happiness, and we're frustrated with our lives. And you see all the social problems that's great. I'm saying that's a consequence of religion. That's a consequence of religious morality. It's crap. It's wrong. It's immoral. Your focus needs to be on making your life the best life that it can be. And of course, other people have a role in that.
Do you think Ayn Rand, yes? The only plus I'm getting for pronunciation. You guys are amazing. Do you think Ayn Rand lived her life according to her philosophies?
Yeah, I do. I do.
So then why do you 30 minutes ago tell me, let's set aside the way she lived. Let's focus on the philosophies she taught. That's a contradiction again.
No.
But it is.
No, because I don't think, I think the ideas need to stand on their own. Whether she did or she didn't, the ideas need to stand on their own. I think Ayn Rand is an exemplar of a philosophy. I think she's a heroine. I think she's somebody to look up to. But I don't want to get into the debate about this personal aspect of her life or that personal aspect of her life, because I don't think that's the core.
But that is your example, though. Like when I come in here and I come to your conference, this is your conference, everywhere I see Ayn Rand. So Ayn Rand is your Jesus. Ayn Rand is your Joseph Smith. Ayn Rand is your L. Ron Hubbard. And you may laugh at it all you want. Go look at the conference. No. Look at your conference. Ayn Rand to you is your God. You're seeing it as your God.
But she's not a God. She is a philosopher. You could go to other conferences where they talk about Aristotle's philosophy or others. She is a philosopher. We all share this philosophy. We've learned the philosophy with her. We admire her. And she changed my life. She changed the lives of most of the people in this room. We have a massive amount of admiration for her. And look, I don't have that big of a problem. She's a heroine. And I have no problem in you saying she is our Jesus. Jesus is a hero to Christians. Ayn Rand and some of her fictional characters in her books are heroes to us. So in a sense of concretizing this image of what this life and what this philosophy is, absolutely she's a massive hero. But I find instead of engaging with the ideas, too many people in the culture want to nitpick her life. And I'm not an expert on her life. I'm not an expert on her biography. I love Ayn Rand because what she did to my life. She changed
only for one reason.
Life.
Only for one reason. It's nitpicking. Yeah. Only for one reason. See, I don't mind sitting there and debating somebody who is an atheist and he wants to debate me whether there's a God or no God or agnostic or whatever you want to do. That's fine. The only time, the reason why this is so much attracted is because there's such a 100% certainty in everything being right. That's the challenge. There's a 100% level of certainty, and that you can only imagine that, a free thinker is going to sit there and say, if you're a free thinker, how could a free thinker say 100% to anything if you're a free thinker? It's a bit of a contradiction.
Yeah, on the other hand, this cup of coffee in my hand is coffee. And this cup is a cup, and it's made of paper, and I'm 100% certain of everything I just said. And so
I don't drink coffee, by the way, just so you guys know. I'm not a coffee guy.
Yeah, but
and I ran a sales office and never drank coffee. Do you not just walk away saying, who is this guy? I don't like him at all. He's so confused. He's missing out on the point of life if he doesn't even drink coffee. Do you follow the author, or have you read his book, Nassim Taleb?
Yes.
I read something in his book.
I read Black Swan. That's the only book of his.
Have you read Skin in the Game or no?
I have not read
I think you would love it.
Yep.
I think you would love it.
Well, after reading Black Swan, I'm not sure.
I like opposition, is what I like. I always like to read opposition. This is why I read Communist Manifesto. This is why I read Rules for Radicals. So here's what it was said. What do you think about this? In the quote, this is a quote by Jeff and Vince Graham in his book. I am, at the Fed level, a libertarian. At the state level, a Republican. At the local level, a Democrat, and at the family and friends level, a socialist. What do you think about that?
I think that is tragic, and I think a lot of libertarians have that view, unfortunately, including Hayek. Friedrich Hayek had the view there was socialist in the family, and you have to abandon those altruistic socialist values in the family when you go out into the community. I'm not a socialist in my family. I don't believe in socialism in any kind of human relationship. I don't believe in sacrifice in any human relationship. I don't sacrifice my wife. I don't sacrifice my kids. They're important to me. I love them. That's why I do what I do for them. But so I think one has to hold your values and be consistent throughout.
You don't sacrifice for your kids?
No.
So when your kids were born and they were newborn babies, you slept 8 hours?
No.
That's sacrifice.
You know why?
Why?
Because my kids were far more important to me than a few hours of sleep.
Then you sacrifice sleep for your kids.
No, sacrifice. Self-sacrifice is something very simple. Words are important, right? Self-sacrifice is when you give something, and what do you expect to get in return? Nothing. So if I go into the Apple store and give them $1,000 and get an iPhone X, did I sacrifice? No, because I got something more valuable. I gave something up. I gave up. But nobody says you sacrificed $1,000. You traded. So I gave $1,000 and I got something more valuable. When I didn't sleep at night, I got something much more valuable. My kids. And what's more important than that, right? So that's not a sacrifice. Jesus, what Jesus did, that's a sacrifice, right? He suffered for other people's sins. I can't think of anything more evil than that. I can't think of anything more evil than that.
For the individual or for the
anybody,
sinners?
For anybody. For a person, think of the injustice.
Yeah.
They committed sins, and I'm going to penalize you for them. And you're going to say, yeah, great, cool. I'm going to sacrifice. Why? Why would you do that?
He chose to do it. It's a choice. He made a choice.
It's an evil choice.
Yeah, that's his choice, though.
Yeah, no, it's a choice.
Yeah,
I'm not going to take away his choice. If you want to commit suicide, fine. But particularly slow and painful suicide, that's your problem. But I still think that's anti-life, that's anti-values. It's evil. It's bad. So, you know, again, that's a sacrifice. And I avoid sacrifice. You know, if so once in a while I'll do something and I'll regret it, but that was a mistake. I don't enter into a relationship with the idea of sacrificing. Sacrificing is bad. I'm for life. I'm for living. And living involves trade. Living involves giving up something to get something greater in return, right? And the person who got the stuff thinks what they got is more than what they gave, right? Apple thinks that the $1,000 is worth more than the iPhone. That's why they engage in the trade. So we won, I won, they won, everybody wins.
Would Ayn Rand be wearing a Make America Great hat again today? Would she walk around today saying, I am just in love with this Trump guy, man. He's just, I love him. I go to sleep thinking about Make America Great again.
She would go to sleep in shock and horror about the state of America under Donald Trump. I think she would hate him. Now, I don't want to speak for Ayn Rand because she was a genius, and it's sometimes hard to say what she would. So I can tell you what I think, not what I think Ayn Rand would think. She would hate him, and she would say, "Yes, I'm for making America great again. It would be great if Donald Trump had a clue what America was, because to make something great, you have to know what it is first." And America's not about steal jobs or this job or this thing or trying to tell, what do you call it, Harley Davidson where they should open a plant. America's about individual rights. America's about freedom. America's is the only moral country in history because it's founded on the principle of individual rights. This is a president who doesn't know what individual rights are. This is a president who has no conception of the Constitution, never mentions the Constitution because he doesn't really care. He just wants to do what he wants to do.
You think he really doesn't care?
I am convinced he cares zero.
Have you met him?
No. I'm convinced he cares zero about the Constitution.
How do you know that?
By watching him and seeing his behavior.
So a lot of the stuff you just said, he's doing a lot of it for you, right? He's deregulating. Every day he's deregulating a lot of laws.
Yeah,
He's lowered the corporate taxes from 35% to 23%, right?
So you want to talk Trump? We can talk Trump. Yes.
No, I'm not talking Trump.
No.
The only reason I ask is because what you just said, he's doing.
Good. He's deregulating. Good for him. Okay. He lowered corporate taxes. Good for him. No, good for everybody.
Yeah.
Good for everybody.
Sure.
But at the same time, he is spending like crazy. So spending is gone up dramatically. What does that do? That sucks money out of the private economy just as if you taxed it. So the difference between taking out bonds to fund the government or taxing is small. One could argue which one is worse for the economy. But on principle, you measure government intervention in the economy by how much dollars they spend. If they're spending more dollars, they're intervening in my life more. So he might be deregulating over here, but something's going up over here, which is bad. On top of that, he's just raised taxes on all of us. It's called tariffs. Tariffs are sales tax. And he's just taxed all of us with tariffs, and he intends to do a lot more of that. But it's more than that. What he does is he diminishes the significance of the presidency. He diminishes what America stands for. He's vulgar. And again, he has no sense of understanding of what this country actually is about and what this country actually means. So
there's nothing this man's done that Ayn Rand would say, I'm pleased with these 3 areas.
Well, sure. I mean, and again, I don't want to speak for Ayn Rand, but yeah, he's deregulating. Good. I'm glad he's deregulating. I'm glad he lowered the corporate tax. That's a no-brainer. So anybody would have done that. But okay. But the negatives, I think, way outweigh the positives. Way outweigh the positives.
So which president has been a president where the Ayn Rand community, objectivism, would say, we like this guy or a possible current candidate?
Grover Cleveland?
That would be it?
Grover Cleveland. No, and none of them, and it's not surprising, right? It's not surprising.
Is anybody going to be able to please Ayn Rand? I highly doubt anyone's going to please Ayn Rand.
Well, I mean, Ayn Rand voted when she was alive, and she voted sometimes. She didn't always vote, but she voted sometimes.
She supported Barry Goldwater. She supported Wilkie. Was it something Wilkie?
She supported Barry Goldwater.
Yeah.
She supported... supported is a
no,
strong
she
word.
Campaigned for Wilkie.
Yeah, no, I was gonna shift to Nixon. She voted for Nixon.
Right,
I wouldn't say she supported Nixon, but she voted for Nixon.
A lot of people changed their minds with Nixon.
Yeah, but I think she wouldn't have with regard to McGovern. McGovern? Yes, McGovern. Because of how far left he was. So she sometimes, you know, closed her nose and voted for people she didn't like. And she ran a campaign, what was it? Anti-Nixonites for Nixon, I think was what she called in 1972. She had, I think, some hope for Nixon in '68, but then he disappointed her, and there were a number of people in the administration who were quite influenced by her in the '72 administration. She would not vote for Reagan. She refused to vote for Reagan.
She wouldn't have.
She didn't. In 1980.
What was her reasoning for it?
She believed Reagan would bring the moral majority into the Republican Party and it would take it over and turn it into a religious party. She was absolutely right, of course. And she said that the harm that he will do by bringing religion and associating with republicanism and capitalism would do more damage long term than any good things he might do on deregulation and lowering taxes.
How would she feel about Obama or Clinton?
She would have despised both of them, including Bush.
So she is like the woman that no matter what you do, nothing can please her. But let me ask you this.
Did you like Obama? Almost nobody says they liked Obama. Does anybody like Bush? Nobody likes Bush. Does anybody like Clinton? Nobody liked Clinton.
The way they ran the nation is different than like them as a...
No, the way they ran the nation.
I've had a lot of beers with liberals and I've enjoyed it. I've had a lot of liberals with some weird people and I've enjoyed it.
So there's some weird people who liked Obama, but the point is that...
as a president, no, absolutely not.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're a capitalist.
Okay.
So as a capitalist, put aside everything else, as a capitalist, did you like Obama? No. Did you like Bush? Sarbanes-Oxley.
Government still got bigger.
I'm going to save capitalism.
Government. You said limited government, but it didn't happen.
I'm going to save capitalism by taking over the banks? No. Did you like Clinton?
Clinton was good with negotiating with Newt Gingrich. He was good
because he was too busy with Monica Lewinsky to bother with legislation, which you know, I'm happy when a president doesn't have time.
Well, he believed in virtues of selfishness. You know, Bill Clinton was a big fan of virtue of selfishness.
No, he's not selfish. He was an impulsive emotionalist. That is not selfish. And you can look at Bill Clinton and you can see how miserable, pathetic, you know, low human being.
But you know what this does to me? But this is what it does.
Selfishness is not about you know, just doing whatever your emotions dictate. Selfishness is about figuring out what's good for you in your life.
How many of you here are under 30 years old? Raise your hand if you're under 30 years old. Got it. Got it.
It's half.
All right. How many above 30?
Now they have.
Okay. How many are now willing to say if you're above 60?
Got a few.
Above 60? Makes sense. How many of you saw Ayn Rand face-to-face, like you saw her live? Wow, listen, that's impressive. I would have loved to. If there's a few people I would have loved to sit with, she's one of them, Milton Friedman's another one. Those are two of my biggest heartbreaks. I wanted to get a chance to meet them. So, well, having said that, I hope you enjoyed this. We're going to do a little bit of Q&A. I think that's part of the next session that we have. Thank you for tolerating me pushing a little bit. What most of you guys don't know is a lot of the stuff I pushed, I am a supporter of. I just want to see the argument. I want to see the emotions and what would happen if you respond to it. This is the way I learned, and I hope you can appreciate that. So if anybody has any questions, I think you guys got the mic over there. All right, this was good.
Talbot is all right.
Here we go.
Here we go.
Hi, I wonder if you would ask Yaron about the second great value called purpose, and what that has to do with trading value for value.
So he asked the question.
He asked the question, yeah. So purpose is, so Ayn Rand has the three cardinal values in Objectivism: reason, purpose, and self-esteem. And purpose is about having, you know, to use Jordan Peterson terminology, right, meaning in life. It's about your central integrating purpose that you're going to have in life. It's what integrates your values. What is your driving force in life? What are you going to do? And I think for almost all of us, our purpose in life is our career. It's where we challenge ourselves, it's where we push ourselves, it's where we spend most of our time, and it's where we engage most with our mind, with our reason, with challenges, with engagement, what we plan long term. So to me, purpose is really, it's not work, right? People talk about going to work. No, it's about having a career, no matter what you are, from a window cleaner all the way up to a CEO of a high-tech company. It's about taking the work that you do seriously. It's about having a plan about how you're going to get better continuously at it, whatever it is that you do, at whatever level you do. And it's about integrating your values around this purpose of making my life the best life that I can be, and producing the, what I'm going to put on the table, the values that I need in order to survive and to thrive and to flourish as a human being.
Love it. Thank you. Next.
Patrick, thank you for coming, doing this. I have to say I'm not familiar with you or your backstory. And I believe I heard you say you were an atheist for 25 years?
25 years.
Okay, I'm just curious, as a point of information, what changed that?
So my parents
you wouldn't mind sharing?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing. So I was an atheist for 25 years because what God wants to see people dying, what God wants to see innocent kids getting bombed on, what God, if you have all the power and the control in the world, why wouldn't you stop it, Why wouldn't you stop it? And so there were days, all our windows were taped up, we'd get bombed, and you'd come out and you see body parts all over the place. One time we're driving on the freeway going to a city called Karaj. Karaj is like the Palm Springs of here. So just think about you going to Palm Springs, dry desert, 2 hours away, and we're going over a bridge, and we're driving in my dad's Renault, okay? White Renault. And we're sitting in the back seat, me and my sister, and we're going over this bridge, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a red light behind us. My dad says, don't look behind you. Of course, we're kids, we can look. We look behind us, bomb drop literally 100 yards behind us, and the bridge is going down. And we go to Karaj. So I'm like, how do you believe in God? I went to Bible study in Tehran. My father's an Assyrian. My mother's an Armenian. Bet David, I'm not Jewish, although a lot of people think I'm Jewish. Bet is house of David. Ben is son of David. And I went to an Assyrian church. We'd go with my dad, and I would get kicked out of Bible study every single Sunday. At 6 years old, they'd kick me out. And I'd go in, and my dad would come and talk to me and say, what's going on with you? What happened this time? He says, honestly, your son just keeps questioning everything. He questions all of us. Everything we do, we are so sick of having him in the class. He's got to be out. He just can't do it anymore. So I'd be out. Okay, I was always questioning all the pastors, priests, everybody. So then I come to the States, and I get extremely curious when I go into the military. I'm in boot camp, and this man, they say, listen, for the people that scored high on their PT score, you get a chance to step away and go to this camp for 2 days. Any chance to get away from boot camp for 2 days is heaven for me. And there was going to be with a few different girls, and at that time it was high quality of virtue selfishness in my version. And so I stepped away, and we went to this camp. I had no idea it was a Christian camp. Here we go. This guy wants to talk to me about Corinthians and the Bible and all this stuff. I'm like, this is too much for me. Well, every night we did Bible study. And I know you're saying we can't. They did. So it was what it was, South Carolina. Yeah. And so the man at the end comes up to me, says, listen, this Bible was given to me 12/24, 1974. I want to give it to you. I think you need it more than I do. And he gave it to me. I said, I don't really need God. God is for weak people who can't reason for themselves. I don't need it. So I stepped away. That night, I said, I'm going to pray 3 times a day, and this is my prayer. Here's how my prayer went. God, I don't believe you exist, okay? But I'm going to speak today, and one of 2 things is going to happen. Either I'm speaking to myself, or you're going to listen. Either way, I'm going to talk. Okay? So I started praying 3 times a day. From September 97 till today, praying 3 times a day, right? And I'm still an atheist. Anyways, I come to the States. I start getting curious about Scientology with L. Ron Hubbard and all his books. I was working with a lot of Scientologists. I started studying a lot of Mormonism. I think they run the most fundamentally sound system of growing a religion better than any other religion out there. System, not the truth, system. Systematically, I think every religion can learn from the way Mormons are packaging their message. I think Ayn Rand's community can learn from Mormons on how they package their message. Not the truth, messaging. I'm talking messaging. Don't take it personally. I know you're offended by this, but talking packaging. So who is this Joseph Smith guy? I started watching God Makers. I started studying all their books and all this other stuff. And why did they leave from Chicago, Vermont? Who were these 6 places that came after he died? Did these 6 places show up in New York? What are you talking about? So, well, Jesus can do this. He can do this. If he can move, so I don't know about this. So Catholicism, you know, all this stuff I started studying. And then I go to Pasadena, Old Town. Just to create controversy, I would hold signs that would say, Jesus is coming. I just wanted people to come and debate with me. And I had no clue what the hell I was talking about. So I'm holding these pickets, you know, these signs at 1 o'clock in the morning. Anyways, after that, you know, it led to one day I was at the top of the Universal Studios movie theater. You guys know what the Universal Studio movie theater is. I'm over there, and my girlfriend and I are sitting in the car. She's sitting right next to me. We had a terrible breakup at that time. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. She gets out of the car. I'm a 49K debt. Nothing's going right for me in that moment. And I hadn't spoken to my mother for 5 years. It's a long time. And I had just gotten a new phone number. No one knows my phone number. 818-968-6610. That's not my number today. It was my number back then. And I said, listen, man, I don't believe you exist. I really, till today, don't believe you exist. If you do, I would like to hear. That's it. She's calling again, by the way. This is how Rand, look, she's not calling her cell phone, right? And that's Yaron's wife. Okay? So I say, if you exist, I'd like to hear my mom's voice. We were on bad terms. Nothing was good. 30 seconds later, the phone rings from a blocked number. And she's crying. I said, what are you crying for? She says, I felt you were in pain. I said, how'd you get my number? I just got your number last week. Why are you calling me right now? I don't know. My mother's never talked to that girlfriend of mine, ever. It's not possible. We start speaking. Let me tell you, I freaked out like you wouldn't believe. Okay, and from there, my journey started. I wanted to find out more. Then I really got deep into it, really investigated more, and slowly but surely, it came to me that this is my faith, not something I believe. This is not reason. This is not certain. It's a lot of doubt. I'm a very doubtful a believer. Probably the biggest doubter in the world of a believer. I'm not the guy that goes around, you know, imposing my beliefs on other people. You ask the question, I give you the answer. I can see a lot of people could care less to hear this topic. It's what happened to me. So in a nutshell, that's briefly my story, but thank you for asking. Truly, thank you. Yes, we've got 10 more minutes there.
Yaron, you reminded us of all the positives of the 19th century, which were the result of freedom. Greatly increased prosperity, relative world peace. The short version of my question is, what the hell happened? Because you look at the 20th century, and you have 2 major world wars, other wars. The massive casualties of those wars were dwarfed by the genocide caused by totalitarian dictatorships. Yep. Can we not learn from example?
Well, we don't learn from example. I don't think humanity learns much from example. I don't think individuals learn much from example, because their interpretation of events is clouded by their ideology, by the ideas that they hold. So it's ideas that led to those catastrophes of the 20th century. You know, you hear socialists today, what do they say? They say, well, those people didn't apply the ideas right. You know, this time we'll get it right.
If we had a noble socialist or a noble communist, it'd be different.
Yeah, so there's no, so of course they were the noble because they were consistent, because socialism leads to death and destruction. It can only lead to that. But to know that, you have to understand ideas. You have to understand. So what happened, I mean, you know this, right? What happened was that the Enlightenment ideas that generated the 19th century were challenged by German philosophers and one French guy, right? And a couple of French guys, but at least Rousseau and Kant, and then the whole string of German philosophers that followed that challenged the Enlightenment, undercut the Enlightenment, made people doubt the Enlightenment, and opened the door to people like Marx and other ideologues to steer us away from the Enlightenment. So communism and fascism are anti-Enlightenment political ideologies based on that German romanticism that's anti-Enlightenment. And the good thing is, and I said this in my talk the other day, right? The good thing is that we bounce back towards the Enlightenment, at least a little bit, right? So, you know, if you think about what happened in 1913, we had World War I and then World War II, right? You'd think that would have crushed us. I mean, think about the devastation, the hundreds, and then communism taking over a third of the world, or maybe 2/3 of the planet. I mean, that would have devastated us, and yet we bounced back from that, and we're bouncing back from that, and vast regions of the planet are bouncing back from that. And I think that's because we bounce back to those Enlightenment ideas of individualism and reason, and they're weak. So it's easy to, the opposition is still there, but the opposition today is not ideological in a sense of a passion for socialism. As I said in my talk, there are no socialists out there. They call themselves social democrats because they don't go all the way with socialism because it's so stupid and it's being crushed and it's being devastated and nobody takes it seriously anymore. So they have to moderate it. But they can't give up on the altruism. They can't give up on the mysticism because those ideologies are still there. And we still don't have, other than Ayn Rand, a proper, comprehensive, systematic defense of Enlightenment values. So I view Ayn Rand as an Enlightenment philosopher, as the philosopher who culminates the Enlightenment. She closes the loop. She gives the philosophical justification for reason as efficacious and egoism and individualism as a proper moral ideal. And that's the power. And I think if we view her that way, I think if we project it into the future, it's easier. There's a foundation there that people have, and we're solidifying that foundation.
Imagine instead of our kids reading Of Mice of Men, or That Was Then, This Is Now, they read Aldous Shrugged.
Yeah.
I mean, these kids being raised thinking about being free thinkers.
Wow.
It'd be a whole different world we're living in if these kids were reading that.
Yep.
Yes.
Hey guys, so Patrick, thanks for doing the interview. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing your story too about like your conversion, coming back to religion.
that.
I think that's cool to be able to do, especially in a community where that's not necessarily the predominant view. So
I like this, but I get a kick out of it. I'm like a masochist. I like this kind of stuff. Go ahead.
So your own what I noticed, just an observation throughout the interview, was a lot of the things that, Patrick, you were getting hung up on was the language, the selfishness piece, or you talked about extremism a little bit. Yaron, could you just talk about that kind of epistemological point of the package dealing that happens? I think that was helpful for me in clarifying a lot of the things that Ayn Rand talked about.
Yeah, so we have a lot of concepts out there. So think of concepts as like a file folder in your mind, where we put different things, and then when we refer to that concept, we open up the folder and pull things out. And part of the problem is that we have in this file folder called selfish, we have very conflicting things. So people think of Steve Jobs, right, or Bill Gates, or any rich person, right, as selfish. Why? Well, because they pursued their passion, because they made a lot of money. So that's kind of a good thing in a sense. I don't think of it as good, but it's in that file folder. But also in that file folder is Bernie Madoff, right? Scumbag, cheater, pyramid schemer, liar, cheater, and everything. So you have in one folder, you have all these examples of good things, pursuing your own values, trying to be happy. All of us out there, not in the room, all out there, are most of the day concerned about their own happiness, concerned about their own family. I always tell audiences, right, your kids are in the pool, the neighbor's kids are in the pool, they're drowning. Who do you save first? And everybody says, I save my kids. Now, the only difference between them and me is I save my kids and I don't feel guilty about that. They save their own kids, but they feel guilty about it because their morality tells them they should have saved the neighbor's kids first. Because you have to love your neighbor just like yourself, so there's no difference between the neighbor's kids and your kids. So we all have a sense of selfishness. We all pursue our self-interest. But we also think that self-interest is associated with lying, cheating, and stealing. It's also associated with Bernie Madoff. That's the culture, right? So we have a
majority out there.
That's what I'm saying, the majority out there. So every time you say selfishness, the thing that pops into their head is Bernie Madoff. It's lying, cheating, stealing. It's nasty people. And what Ayn Rand is saying is clean it up, clean the folder, right? We need to create a different folder for Bernie Madoff because there's something inherently different about what Bernie Madoff does and what Bill Gates does or what Steve Jobs does. There's something inherently different between being productive and taking care of your life and using your mind to make your life better than lying, cheating, and stealing. So let's create a separate folder for the lying, cheating, stealing bastards, right? Let's call it self-destruction. And let's have self-interest clean, right? Real self-interest, long-term self-interest, rational self-interest, using your reason to pursue your own flourishing. So conceptually, we need to clean up our concepts, and therefore then we can use these terms, and people will understand us. So part of our job is just housekeeping, cleaning it up. And that's called a package deal when you put in contradictory things. All right, we don't have much time.
Who was the gentleman that asked the question? You went and sat back down. Where did he go? He ran up. Where are you? Okay. By the way, for me, I hope you realize my mindset from the outside is the marketing aspect of it. That's all I'm thinking about. How do you market it to get 18, 19, 20-year-olds to say, this makes sense, and get it to them even more? So anyways, we got 5 more minutes. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This question is directed at both of you. We usually say things like, oh, why would a God allow a child rapist or concentration camps or murders or any other evils or ugliness of the world, when we could say the converse, the opposite? We can say, well, why are there paintings and sculptures and skyscrapers and beautiful things? What kind of God would allow that? So I just would like to see if you two would elaborate a little bit more on that kind of idealism, please. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I don't think in those terms because I don't think there's a God. I mean, I know there's no God. No. And I've known that since the age of 6. So to me, the question of why would God allow this or why would God allow that doesn't come into my mind. But I do find it funny, right? I find it entertaining that when the guy catches the pass in the Super Bowl in the end zone in the last second, the first person he asks, he thanks is God, right? But when he drops the pass,
it's himself.
He doesn't go like this, right? Right? So we give God credit. I mean, people give God credit for all the good stuff, but they don't blame him for the bad stuff, which I find bizarre and ridiculous, right? I mean, either he's control, and therefore he gets credit and blame for everything, or he's not in control, and therefore he doesn't get credit for the good stuff either. But the whole idea doesn't cross my mind because there is no God. So if you caught the pass, good for you, and if you dropped it, go practice some more.
Thank you.
Yes. Next question.
My question for both of you is, and I think you answered it in a little bit with your marketing piece. We're all fans of capitalism here. What's our game plan? We're all reading a lot of books. We're coming together at conventions. We're doing a lot of talking. We're doing a lot of thinking. What does that look like going forward? How is that going to produce difference in the world?
Can I address that?
Sure.
Okay. You're talking specific to capitalism, right?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Can you raise your hand if you are not white? If you were not born in America, raise your hand if you were not born in America. Okay, that's amazing. Okay, so I'll give you a perfect example here. So I am with Charlie Kirk. I don't know if you know who Charlie Kirk is.
I know Charlie.
A guy from Point USA, Turning Point USA. Yep. He's doing a phenomenal job, by the way, out there. He's making a lot of noise. Some people like him, some people don't like him. Marketing-wise, he's killing it, period. And he's producing the content around capitalism, which is great. I was at one of his conferences in Dallas, and I went up to him. I said, so let me ask you a question. This is great. You're talking about capitalism. This is phenomenal stuff here. I said, what percent? I said, I notice a lot of people here are white. And he says, no, they're not. I said, I notice about 90% are white. He says, no, we have 46 people here that are African American and Hispanic. I said, how many people total you got here? He says 1,000 people. I said, it's 95% white. That's my point. And by the way, this is on video when you hear me talking about it. It's like, well, it kind of is, but I said, the biggest challenge for me is the following. How many of you here completely disagree with Ayn Rand? This is the problem. You guys are the problem. You asked me the question, I'm giving you my answer. You are the problem. You know what this ought to be? Here's what this ought to be. All these donors that gave all this money here, you need to have 3,000 seats, and one of them is an open guest. Just invite people with 3,000 people, pamphlets, and let them leave and hear the presentation of capitalism. Let them make a decision for themselves. You don't have to like what I'm saying. What's the purpose of all of us coming together and talking about this? We agree about this stuff. I'm in Greece last week. I'm in Athens last week, okay? So I announced I'm in Greece on Snapchat and Instagram. Boom, 20 kids show up. Do we have 1 minute? Where we are with time-wise?
Let me close this.
Yeah, he's going to have to close it.
What?
You're okay with one more? Okay, sounds good. Okay, so Anu's the boss. If she's telling us we can go, I'm just going to watch for her to tell us yes or no. And she's from Finland. She also doesn't have a team in the World Cup. Iran got kicked out, so we're fine. We're the same. So let me go back to it. I'm in Greece. I'm talking to these kids. 20 of them show up. 20 of these entrepreneurs show up right outside of Acropolis. So I said, let me ask you a question. So what are you guys doing right now to save Greece? What's your game plan for Greece? He says, what do you mean? I said, how are you guys planning on saving Greece? I mean, you saw what happened with your country. You guys don't know how to manage money. You have no clue what's going on. What's your game plan? He says, well, you know, our politicians, all they want to do is tax, tax, tax. They don't know how to manage money. They're corrupt. They're this. I said, so what are you doing about it? He says, I don't know. I said, so the solution for all of you is capitalism. What's going to save Greece is capitalism. I said, so the kid, 18-year-old kid says, the other day I wore the Valuetainment shirt that says, I love capitalism. I said, what happened? He says, I went to school. Teacher pulled me aside and said, you got to take that shirt off. I said, did you take it off? He said, yes. I said, you shouldn't have. Kept it on. I said, you know what you guys got to do at night? I said, here's a campaign. Here's my challenge to you. If you guys want to really do something about Greece. I said, pick one day. All of you guys here, the 20 of you, put money together. Create 500 posters, white, red letters that says, capitalism will save Greece. Take 10 locations in Athens that has the most traffic. Between 1 to 3 o'clock in the morning, post 50 posters at the most traffic place right next to each other, and wake up in the morning at 5 o'clock and record everybody that walked past it. See what happens. You guys got to create awareness. You guys got to come together and talk about this. Oh my gosh, you know what happens if we do that? We'll get arrested. I said, that's what you're going to have to do. Because you have two choices. Either do that or you have to go to America. But you got one of these two choices. We're going to keep spreading the concept of capitalism from our end. I think the way we're going to be doing it is realizing if you go on YouTube right now, if everybody took out their phones right now, if you typed in the word entrepreneur, 80% of the videos will be myself talking about capitalism. If you went on YouTube right now, you typed in the word entrepreneur, 80% of the videos are us. Why? We want to get this message out. But, this is my last one, I'll come to you. The virtues of selfishness. To me, if you guys did a focus group and you got people that came in and said, what do you think about this word? You have two things. Either we're going to work so hard to change the way people think about the word. More power to you. Or why don't we repackage this messaging? What word is saving capitalism, believe it or not, is entrepreneurship. People are more receptive to entrepreneurship than they are to capitalism. It's the same exact thing. Anti-abortion, pro-life. The packaging needs to be better. I believe if we do that, we're going to get the attention of the younger audience. That's my thoughts. What do you think?
So first, you want the game plan. Come to Tull's presentation in like 20 minutes. The new CEO of the Ayn Rand Institute, he'll give you the game plan. Yeah, packaging matters. It doesn't matter as much as I think Patrick thinks it does, because
if you want the younger audience,
because people are going to hate the concept of selfishness, even if we call it something else. It's not the opposition to the word; it's the opposition to the idea. It's the idea that they find offensive. We can call what happens when you call it entrepreneurship. What happens when you call it free? By the way, free enterprise polls better than free markets, which polls better than capitalism. So let's use free enterprise. But what happens when you use free enterprise is the reason it polls better. It's watered down, and it's going to be watered down more and more and more. So if you really care about capitalism long term, then I believe you have to understand the philosophy on which capitalism is based. And the philosophy on which capitalism is based is a philosophy grounded on reason and individualism. Those are the two most important concepts. The reason you come to this conference is not to convert you into capitalists, but to A, give you emotional fuel because it's just fun, and B, give you more substance so that you can go out there into the world and defend the concept of capitalism better on the basis of individualism and reason, which nobody else other than us is doing. Capitalism will not survive the conservative and libertarian attempts to defend it on quicksand, on nothing. All right, do we have one? Do we have time or don't we?
Such a good question, though.
Oh, he's got a question? You know, yeah.
Patrick,
yes.
What, if anything, have you learned from Ayn Rand?
Ayn Rand.
Yeah. What did I say?
What is wrong with you?
Ayn Rand.
Are you kidding me?
Sorry.
You should have corrected him. That would have
you
been,
ought to be embarrassed of yourself right now, right? By the way, look at my phone. It says, I am an entrepreneur. Everywhere I go, and I put my phone like this intentionally everywhere I go. I want people to know the power of entrepreneurship. What have I learned from her? Really, like I used to think I was a weirdo. And I'm being dead serious with you. I used to push everybody. I used to push, religious. I never did good with authority. And I would always be called like, oh, Pat, you're this, you're that, you're that. You don't do well with authority. You don't do this. I'm like, it's not that I don't do well with authority. I want to question every flipping thing in life. And by the way, I'm sitting here with you guys, and you're like, what is wrong with this guy? The pastors I sit with feel the same way about me. My local community feels the same exact way about me. My family feels the same way. The people I run with on a daily basis feel the same. The insurance industry did a cover story on me on the biggest life insurance magazine in America, and you should see what they say about me. We have to change it up. So for me, what she did is simply allowing it okay for you to be a free thinker and knowing at the end of the day, there's a reason why I went on a 30-day tour. I lived in an RV and went across the country from LA to Miami to Toronto to San Francisco, back to LA, spoke to nearly 10,000 people on the concept of capitalism for 30 days. My kid's birthday was there, but I went in this RV because people need to understand that this concept of capitalism can free anybody. If it did it for me, for other people as well. So we're going to keep screaming off the top of our lungs the concept of capitalism. You will see us doing it with the way we do it. And hopefully 5, 10 years from now, there's going to be hundreds of millions of people sitting there saying, you know, this capitalism concept is good. And to go back to piggyback with the point that he said, remember, Mormons are good at one thing. They bring them in. They worry about baptizing people later, not the other way around. You can't baptize them up front. You bring them in, and then you baptize them. If you had 3,000 people in this room, there's more opportunities to baptize. Who cares if 40% disagree? If I convert 20%, we're ahead of the game. We're going to keep baptizing entrepreneurs. That's what we're going to be doing for the next 10 years. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. One last one.
Patrick. So
you're the CEO, right?
Yes,
is he the CEO?
Exactly.
Yes,
and
sir.
I got Anu to allow me to ask the last question. We're going to meet in a second.
Sure.
Did you read this book?
Which one is that?
Atlas Shrugged.
Of course, I have multiple times.
Okay. And what did you think?
Everybody in the world needs to read that book.
Cool.
That's all I have to. Everybody in the world needs. By the way, not just that book. Every one of the books she wrote, Fountainhead. Every one of those books. You got to study this one, and forget about just the book. Study her interviews. Study how she thinks. Study how she responds. Anything you can find on Ayn Rand, you ought to read about. Anything.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Patrick.
Buddy.